Hello and welcome. Welcome to our Offbeat Life, the podcast where we explore the life lived off the beaten path. Today, we want to give a warm welcome to our special guest, Mary, author of the captivating memoir, Monkeys on the Road, which chronicled her family's extraordinary van life adventure from the USA to South America over 4 years.
We just wanna travel the world, the world, the world, travel the world.
Today, we dive into the emotional and practical aspects of their remarkable journey. Let's uncover the motivations, challenges, and unforgettable moments that shape this unique experience. So, with that, I want to introduce y'all to Mary. Hello.
Hello, thanks for having me, David.
Welcome. Thanks for being here. So, I was wondering if you could take a second to share a little bit about your background and what it was like before your van life adventure.
Yeah, sure. My background's a bit unique. I was born and raised in England, but to American, born and raised by American parents. My family's mostly American. So lived there till I was 18, but then I went to college in America, and that kind of got me rooted in the US. Fell in love with rock climbing. Big difference after growing up in a big city where I had pretty much never gone outdoors except to go to a pub or a store or a restaurant. Completely fell in love with rock climbing and mountain biking and skiing. It just the outdoors, which I hadn't experienced before, and that led me to Yosemite. I worked in the Bay Area for a long time, but I was always weekending in Yosemite to be able to climb, and that's where I met my now husband, John. We got married in Yosemite. Our daughter was born not too long after that, and we lived in near San Francisco, the Silicon Valley area. I was working at Google, and he was doing a startup. So we did the whole tech thing for about 15 years before the van trip.
Very, very cool. So then, what inspired you to leave that corporate type world and pursue a very unconventional lifestyle?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I've always had a bit of the kind of travel wanderlust. I think maybe spending half my life in one country and half in the other. I've never really felt like I fit in. Like growing up in England, I was born and raised in England and I sounded English back then. Now I've got this kind of weird middle accent. But I'd have my packed lunch was like peanut butter and jelly. And my friends were like, what's that weird food? Or my friends would call the house and my dad would answer, why has he got that weird accent? And then the same thing in reverse when I went to America for college. Now, why do I have a strange accent or people referring to TV shows that I've never heard of? And so I think just, for like 35 years, I didn't really ever 100% fit anywhere and just became comfortable with that. That was the norm and almost what brought interest and challenge and excitement to life. And then luckily my husband, he's American through and through, but he also just loves, adventure and travel and change. And I guess the main, the impetus at that point specifically was that we had our daughter and we were both working crazy busy jobs and we just really weren't seeing each other much. I'm telling a story that thousands of people I'm sure could repeat pretty much word for word at this point, but just working way too many hours in the day, like rushing around, be kind of ships passing in the night. Are you going to pick up? Are you going to cook dinner? Are you going to? And we just kind of hatched a plan to figure out a way to do something where we would spend a lot more time together while Lily, our daughter, was so young and just really wanted to be with us. And all she wanted to do was snuggle in bed and read books with us and just be able to enjoy those times before she kind of grew up and flew away. So we've always loved any kind of travel adventure, but usually it was rock climbing focused. Any trip we did, it was rock climbing focused. But with Lily, that's much harder to do, big climbs, of course. And so we kind of brainstormed what could we do with a 5-year-old. We originally wanted to do a big bike trip, which we ended up doing more recently. But we had her in a little trailer. We did a test trip all around Washington State, and it's doable. People do it. They're way more hardcore than I am. But dragging her around in a little trailer on, sketchy little roads in South America for years just didn't seem like the safest thing. And so we adjusted and went with the van instead. And then we moved into the van and we were very open-minded about, is this kind of a 1-year thing or a multi-year? Where do we live next kind of a thing?
That is so cool. That's so familiar.
Yeah.
So many people that we talked to in this lifestyle have a very similar thought process on it. I mean, you want to enjoy the time with your kids while they're young and want to snuggle with you.
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, before we continue, I want to learn more about the book and about this trip. But before we do, I want to get to know you a little bit better. So, water, coffee, soda, or tea?
Mostly water, although that's being a terrible English woman. But yeah, I'm not
All
much
right.
about coffee. And when I was working a lot, I'd have an afternoon coffee. And soda, never. I've never liked those sugary, fizzy drinks. Yeah, we don't have any soda in the house ever.
Wow. All right. Pets, cat, dog, something else?
I would love any pet. I especially love dogs. Who doesn't? They're just so friendly and lovable. But being someone who loves to travel, we've never had a pet except in Argentina. We could talk about that a bit when we were trapped in a tiny village in Argentina for over a year with COVID. We kind of
Mhm.
got adopted by dogs and cats in the neighborhood. So that was a wonderful experience to have those for a while. But yeah, if I had to pick cat or dog, I'd go dog.
Nice. Okay. Pool or beach?
They have their pros and cons, but I love beach for going on long walks and exploring, and I love snorkeling and scuba diving. So
There you go. Okay. City or countryside?
definitely, 20 years living in a massive city, and then San Francisco after that. Actually, now I'm all about the small town, being close to the mountains and trails. And
Okay. Okay. Well, then, would you rather have an unlimited free flight pass or a magical RV that would take you anywhere?
well, I had a magical RV that took me anywhere. That was Vancito. It was great.
You did. They did. That's pretty cool. All
Yeah.
right. And if you could hop into a time machine and visit any historical event or era with your family, where and when would you go?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. Historical time. It would be interesting to jump back in time to any period just to see what it was like. But I feel like I'm very happy to live in the time period that we're in now. We've studied so much history on our travels with Lily as part of her homeschooling. And the conclusion is always, I'm really glad we don't live then. So maybe way back before civilization, just because it would be interesting to see the Earth before there were cities, be able to walk around where London now is or where San Francisco now is, or go to Yosemite when there's no tourists. That would be really fascinating to see those places before there was so many people.
That would be. That would be. Cool. All right. Well, how did you prepare for such an extensive journey? And like, what was your thought process behind it? Did you have to do some downsizing, or did you have some storage places? What was your
Yeah.
process?
Well, I'm like a ridiculous organized woman. I was a director of program management at Google, and so it was spreadsheets and spreadsheets and project plans and timelines. And meanwhile, my husband, who's the super hands-on builder ADHD guy, was building us a home and doing that kind of thing. So just between us, we work very well to cover all the bases. We've got a pretty clear like division of responsibilities both before and on the trip that worked out really well. Um, but yeah, so I could share a list of. In fact, I have the spreadsheet came up enough on my travels or afterwards with the book that I made like a sort of a version of it with all my details removed, and I just put it on our website for anyone that wants to look at a list of things to do. But it's boring, mundane things like switch to a credit card that doesn't have international fees and a ATM card that doesn't have withdrawal fees, and to the much more complicated things like how are you going to homeschool your child both legally and effectively, and how are you going to you know renew your car registration when you're abroad. Some states you have to have a smog, and there's no way you're going to get a smog. Like there's a huge list of kind of mundane details, but in the broader sense, it was kind of emotionally wanting to do it, which for us, the three of us, it was a no brainer. We were excited to do it. I know a lot of couples, one wants to and the other doesn't. Um, and then two, financially, like how do you get to a position where you're either going to be working on the road, which makes for a different kind of trip than if you've got a specific pile of money and you're going to be going through that pile of money. Um, So we managed to set up so that we would have, or maybe you're going to ask me this question later, but so we had a rental house income and worked from the road a bit. But yeah, and then downsizing. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe, we're fairly transient people, but we had lived in the same house for, at that point, 5, almost 6 years, because I was pregnant when we moved in, and Lily was almost 6 when we moved out. But the amount of stuff we accumulated was unbelievable. So I had sort of different tiers of things. There was like the big things I was sold on Craigslist, individual larger items like furniture. And then there was the medium, like these things are still nice and useful, but not really, it's not worth like selling a whole bunch of stuff. So I found the Veterans Association will actually do pickups at your house. And then they're able to sell things to raise money for veterans. So I had lots of Veterans Association pickups. And then the lowest level, of course, is trash. If you call your city trash people, they usually will do an extra special pickup. So that took a long time just to get rid of just so much stuff. And I love the feeling of having little. I love, just living out of a backpack or living out of a car. And so it felt good for me to be cutting down on a lot of our belongings.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a pack rat at times when I get stationary for too long, but I get that feeling when you live out of your backpack and you know the essentials and these are the things that I use all the
Yeah.
time. It is freeing. It is freeing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and especially with a child, I'm sure as you know, I don't know your child specifically, but they're not the tidiest of human beings on the on the planet. And so when you live in a van, it's wonderful because you have so few things and everything has a place, and you can't drive away unless the things are away, or you might first drive away a few times without putting stuff away and they all fall down. So your child quickly learns like, no, whatever thing you take has to go back to its spot and
Yeah.
closed in there. So it was nice for me with my like organized mind to always have everything be put away neat and tidy and know where everything was. And having just, like 3 t-shirts, it's liberating. So many people think, how did you live with only one drawer of clothes each? And I say, it was great. You don't really have to spend much time getting dressed in the morning.
Yeah, everybody's, that watches this podcast on YouTube or, whatnot, they see the same shirt that I wear on the podcast, so,
Yeah.
I have
So
8 shirts, but I'm like, this is the one I like for the for displaying when I go out, so,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's just the way
If we
you
had
have
like the
it's the way you
one
live.
slightly nice shirt. Yeah, yeah, it makes
Exactly.
life much simpler. And it also just makes you think about priorities. Like, who really cares what clothing you have on, depending on where you're traveling? But where we were, like, we were going through areas where like clothing was not something that people were thinking about, except for us trying to be warm enough or not too hot, depending on the climate.
Yeah, it's practicality that it comes down to with what you pack and where you're planning on going. Which brings me to thinking about the trip because you went through many different climates. We had a very similar trip, which is why I'm very excited to talk to you. You did it over 4 years. I did it over 2 years. You did it in a van. We did mostly house sits and Airbnbs because we needed the internet, and that type of thing. So we have very similar, but a different way of doing a very similar trip. And packing, since we're already on that topic, how did you decide what to bring in the van with you, knowing that you're going to go through hot, rainy seasons, all the way down to Ushuaia, where it's freaking cold?
Yeah, that was tricky, but I mean, basically, the first, I don't know, however many months of the trip, or probably no more than a year of the trip, was just wonderful weather. Like we did an occasional drive up a windy thing to a volcano and be cold for a couple of days, but 90% of the time it was lovely camping on the beach kind of weather. And so it was, we each had 2 pairs of shorts and 2 t-shirts and a bathing suit, and that's basically what we lived in. But as for packing, we also brought a raincoat each, like, a Gore-Tex kind of thing, and one down jacket that was just like crammed into a stuff sack and stuffed in the bottom corner of somewhere. And we each had a sleeping bag, which also for the first year we didn't use much at all. For us, it was almost more the gear side of things. Like we ideally wanted to have rock climbing gear with us, but rock climbing gear is bulky and heavy. We had Lily's bike at first, which that lasted, I think, maybe about a year, but just didn't really make sense. And then that had a helmet with it. Fins, mask, and snorkel. Those were the things I think that took up a bit more space. And then just the van itself, the water tank where all of our drinking water and washing water lives, and batteries for the solar panels and all of that stuff, the stove, the table, chairs. And that takes up a lot of space too. Oh, and then also all of Lily's homeschooling. So that was a one whole kind of drawer bin thing as well. So yeah, clothing wasn't that much.
No, no, I found that we could a lot of times buy what we needed when we were there because other people around the world have the same things that you want.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, but all right, so you left in what year?
September 2017.
All right, and you finished it when?
Well, it depends what finished means. So March of 2020, we were still on trip. So at that point,
Huh?
that's from 20, so let's see, 17, 18, 19. That's so 2.5 years. We were in northern Argentina, and COVID hit. So then we spent the next 15 months in Argentina because it was no, we were 15 months in Argentina, but after COVID, we stayed a year in this little town. Anyway, long story short, it was April 21 when we got kicked out finally. So we
Uh,
were abroad for 3.5 years, but it was really 2.5 years of active van travel and then 1 year on lockdown in Argentina.
okay, so doing that pre and during the COVID time, what were some of the most memorable moments during that road trip? If you could list off your favorites.
Um, I mean, I guess I would kind of categorize like highlights as there's like, geography, landscape type highlights. There's like people
Oh, yeah.
interaction highlights. There's like sort of different ways to think about it. Um, I guess from a like sort of natural beauty, I would say that actually the very beginning of our trip, Baja, was amazing. I think partly because we were so excited and we had just come out of our crazy jobs and we were like just so full of joy and freedom. And it was a lot of just like camping in the middle of nowhere, watching amazing sunsets, spending all day in the water and just like kind of feeling this freedom. Um, but then also northern Peru was really gorgeous. We did these incredible hikes way up high in the mountains, up to like 15, I think 16,000 feet we got up to. Just incredible, huge snowy mountain peak views, and just the experience of being out there, sort of very remote and seeing this beauty. Um, but then also, I think I have to talk about like the because sort of people experience too, where there are some surprising moments of like so. Let's say Colombia, for example. That's a country which, if you ask me like, what are the top 5 things to see in Colombia, I'd be like, no, I can tell you a few things, but nothing really stands out. But what absolutely stood out, it was the friendliness of the people. It was what we even kind of heard about it. I bet if you've just done this drive, you probably, every traveler you meet is like, wait till you get to Colombia. They're so friendly. And we kind of thought this is a bit of ridiculous, but every single time we parked the van, someone would knock on the door or the window and just to say like, who are you? What are you doing here? Come to my house for coffee. I mean, it was like, it got to the point where at first we thought it was so amazing, and it was amazing. But eventually, we'd park the van and then a knock would come and we were like, oh, I went last time. I just want to relax. Or, like, it was incredible to be in a place. And also you're traveling through these, very poor areas because in a van you avoid cities. You're out in the middle of nowhere to get a park. And I always would think like, just in this van, we have probably more in terms of wealth and security than most of these tiny little huts that we're driving by. And yet people, especially in Colombia, were always giving us stuff. Especially they would give Lily like hand-me-down toys or shoes, or they'd always give us food and come to eat with us or fruit from our tree. And so there was a lot of personal interactions. Like in Guatemala, we stopped and it was the first time we did a bit of volunteering. We were teaching English and we met this amazing family. This little girl, I changed her name in the book and now I can't remember the fake name that I put in there. So I'll just refer to her as this amazing little girl. I mean, she lived in the simplest rundown little, it was kind of like corrugated iron leaning against a wall and some tarps hanging over. And we would go and do play dates back and forth at her house and our house. And Lily and the girl became best friends. And the grandmother that she lived with would always be making us coffee and making us some whatever little tortillas that she had. And I feel like there were so many experiences like that where your eyes are opened to like, the people on the other side of the borders and how life is down there and what people's priorities are, back to like clothes, like nobody cares about clothes. they just care about, if you're smiling and you're kind and you're generous, and then you're part of their community. So anyway, top experiences, I feel like I could talk for hours about different kinds of top experiences. I mean, animals is another
Yeah.
one, the Galapagos, Costa Rica. I mean, just incredible some of the animal encounters that we had in these areas. I think the beauty of the van trip is that you always seek out the most remote place to park because you're trying to sleep in your vehicle. You would need to be away from everything. And so you'd wake up and step out and there'd be a sloth in the tree next to you, or there'd be like a wild horse galloping across the beach in front of you. And we had so many amazing, just, wake up and look out the window experiences that I'll definitely never forget.
Wow, I like that. Those look out the window experiences from being off the beaten path like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I love just waking up and like so often we'd wake up and whoever woke up first would say, "Where are we?" And we'd almost play this game of like, okay, I don't hear ocean. I don't hear noise of a city. Did we drive yesterday? And because we moved so much, we could never remember until we looked out the window. Like, oh yeah, okay, yeah.
That's really cute. That's really cute. And I totally agree with you on the Colombian people being the most friendly that we've met in pretty much the
It's
whole world so far.
crazy. Yeah. I mean, and among the traveling community, it's almost this like they're notorious. And it wasn't until I got there that I realized, like, wow, I mean, every time I remember like walking back from swimming somewhere, we're like dripping in our bathing suits, walking to the van, and this couple said, "Hey, come and have some coffee." And it just was like over and over again. We started having these like really interesting discussions on the road where we would debate all kinds of different things about what we were seeing around us. But one of them was like, what makes an entire nation of humans different than the one right next to it? And it's got to be all,
Yeah,
a myriad of things. Like they came out of war not too long ago, like things like that. But it's fascinating to these kind of intellectual conversations that we ended up having on the drives.
it's very cool. Yeah. And you mentioned exotic animals, like sloths and what were some of your favorite of those experiences that you had?
Well, I love monkeys, as you might guess from our book name and everything, and blog name, Monkeys on the Road, because we're rock climbers, and it's kind of a common thing. You refer to yourself as the monkeys. So I loved. We stopped and volunteered at a little monkey sanctuary place in eastern Ecuador, and it was so fun. Every morning, I'd wake up and walk down the little trail, sort of say good morning to all the different monkeys. And there's a little funny story I wrote in the book about for Christmas. I was baking a banana bread just for the communal, the volunteers dinner that night. And I went to the hut where they store all the food and I grabbed a bunch of bananas and I had to get some zucchinis also for the other one. But yeah. And I was walking back to the little communal kitchen and a monkey like jumped on my shoulder and like took the bananas away. And I was like kind of playing tug of war with this monkey and I couldn't because my hand was so full. But I've loved the times where we've been able to feel just temporarily, but feel as though we're part of this very different lifestyle and living it. And then, we only leave after a week or a month, depending on what we're doing. But it's just really, really interesting to know, like, wow, some people live there and that's their life for years and years and years. Every day they see those monkeys, they get to know them, they worry about which ones they're going to try to release into the wild or fundraising, or it's great to have this like snippet into a very different lives all around.
Yeah. What I know that they left an impact on you, these different places that you were at. Do you feel like you left an impact on them? And if so, what kind?
I guess the brief ones, I don't know if they would still remember, but actually, like this, one of the earliest kind of generosity of strangers experiences that we had was in Mexico, and the woman and she still sends a Facebook Messenger text every now and then, like, "How is little Lily? How is things going?" In terms of leaving an impact on them, I don't know, but we had so many times where people would express surprise and amazement that we were living in a van and traveling so far, and so maybe that opened their eyes a bit to sort of the size of the world. Um, one of the places where we volunteered, we're still in touch. That family I was telling you about, the little girl, we're still in touch, and we like sponsor a child every year to pay just like their school books and uniforms and stuff like that. So little things like that, I suppose.
That sounds amazing. Yes. Well, how about is there a specific story that you put in the book that has had a lasting impact on you?
I think probably just the accumulation of so many little experiences, more than one in particular. it definitely had me coming home thinking like, wow, I'm really selfish. I'm really like, I don't like if a car drives by, I don't run out and say, come and have dinner. And, is that selfish or is that just normal in America? And I shouldn't say in America, but in general in the first world, of course, also England, Australia, many countries, not to pick on America. But when you live in a place long enough where people are like that, you start to think like, man, am I a really selfish person? And I think that's the kind of the maybe the lasting impact on me is just trying to be much more open to like when I see someone. Well, actually, one's a very specific thing is whenever I see anybody who is clearly struggling with English as a second language, I will always go up now. And if it's Spanish, I can talk to them. If it's something else, I can still try Google Translate or whatever, because I have been that person now so many times in so many countries. And so, yeah, a foreigner in my adopted country, I will always kind of gravitate towards them like the moth to the flame and say, can I help somehow?
Yeah. That's awesome. That sounds really cool that that you were affected in such a way that now you reach out to and you know what other people are going through. So you're able to
Yeah,
make them
yeah.
feel a little bit better.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and just like it was just eye-opening to see people that had so little of that by my standards and were sharing what they had, and it made me just think over and over again, like, okay, remember that when I'm back and I have like a house and a car and a healthy child, and I can't really complain. And I mean, everybody talks about this, like when you see people who are worse off, it makes you appreciate more what you have, and just trying to be more sharing and giving. And when you're out on the trails and you're sharing your food or you're just, in life in general, trying to be more of a large community rather than individuals.
Yeah. Well, and then how did you handle your daughter's education? You mentioned some homeschooling stuff. Uh, but what were some of the unique experiences that she went through that you consider education for her during this trip?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so we did the legal paperwork stuff, and then we paid a lot of attention to what does she need to be learning in first grade, and then now it's second grade, now it's third grade, we're still doing this in its fourth grade. So we are constantly refreshing that. What are the California standards that you need to learn every year, and there's tons of online resources now after COVID, and even then there were some. So we found the right thing for her. She was so small that she couldn't read yet, so it's a different kind of homeschooling than this recent trip that we did, where she can obviously read and write. So now it's more of an online thing. But yeah, I think we took it pretty seriously. We met some families that are more of unschoolers, they call it, which is just don't do anything specifically because your child is going to learn general things from being in all these different countries, which I can see, but I don't know. I'm a mathematician. My husband's a physicist. We were like, no, she's doing math every day. She's not going to just learn to count coconuts. We need to do this specifically. Um, and also because she'd been struggling to learn to read, we figured that's very important. So yeah, so pretty much every day we did at least reading and math. Those are the two priorities. Um, and then just from, general learning along the way, there's like specific things about like we talked about politics and voting when we were in Bolivia, and there was a complete revolution. The country shut down, protests in the streets, and we were trapped in the city for a while. And so we talked a lot about, okay, well, what is it? What are they doing? Why are they doing it? What would happen if someone did this in America? Or we also, like I think I mentioned before, had these kind of random conversations in the van prompted by what we were seeing outside of our windows. So, all these border crossings. Lily's like, what is all this paperwork and administration, bureaucracy? Not that she had any of this words at 6 years old, but every time we cross the border. So we'd be driving along afterwards thinking like, why is it different? Like we just crossed an invisible line in the dirt and suddenly people are speaking a different language, like, Mexico to Belize, or different currency, or different clothing, or like, why is that? And so it prompted a lot of conversations and Googling things while we were driving for hours in the van about why these things happen. Or in
Yeah.
languages too. Of course, she learned a lot of Spanish, and there were some places in Guatemala primarily that we stayed that were so remote that the people don't even speak Spanish. And that was really eye opening. And again, prompted these conversations about like, why wouldn't you teach your kids Spanish at least to give them the chance to move to the next door city and get maybe a higher paying job, and well, they want them to stay and work there. And there was a lot of chat about a girl of Lily's age who you would see washing clothes in the river. And you think like, she's going to probably be doing that forever. She can't speak Spanish. She isn't going to school, and that's their life. And not to say it's better or it's worse. It's just different. But it's not educational in as much as like Lily wrote an essay about the Second World War, but it's educational, just kind of opening your eyes to the different ways that there are of living around the world.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we noticed that too when we were in Guatemala, and our son pointed it out to us that there were so many different languages, and because we kept going
Yes.
off the beaten path, and you try the local Mayan languages, I think there's like 20 something, 22 languages
Yeah. Yeah.
out there. Yeah, so yeah, it's just so cool, and yeah, you,
Lily went to a local school in Guatemala when she did it. She learned some of, gosh, I can't remember, Quechuquel, I think it's called. She learned
yeah,
some of that language, and so
kitchen.
she'd go home and she would have learned. So that was really interesting to get a bit of exposure to that.
Okay. Well, now you visited a lot of places along the way. And being in a van, I'm sure you were able to get off the beaten path to see some other ones. What was some like unexpected gems that you discovered?
Um, I probably northern Peru. Like Peru is so well known, of course, for Machu Picchu, which is spectacular. But up in northern Peru, there were these much more remote ruins, and I'd have to look up names now. It's been a while. Like Ravache and Pueblo de los Muertos was one of the most amazing, and we would just find them on the map, drive as close as we could get to one, and there would usually be a tiny village with a little a square in the middle of it, and we'd park the van on the edge of the square. I'd hop out, and there'd be immediately a few people kind of like, huh, what's going on? And so I'd go and chat to them and say who we were, and is it okay if we park here? Is it going to bother anyone? Is it safe? And they'd always say, "Oh, of course, yes, yes, yes. Come and eat here, and tell us your story." And then we'd spend the night in this remote village in the middle of nowhere with nothing. And then in the morning, we'd walk over and see these ruins, which aren't on the scale of Machu Picchu, but there was nobody there. It was kind of a different experience of, maybe you'd be there at sunset or at sunrise and all around. The one I think I remember the most is the one I mentioned, Pueblo de los Muertos, like town of the dead, basically. And it was maybe an hour-ish hike to get there. And
Mm.
but we started trying to get there, and the road was so like muddy and washed out, we couldn't make it. So we turned around, and we spent that evening in a little tiny village where we ran into a woman, and we mentioned this to her. And she said, "Oh, yeah, it rained this morning. I'm sure it'll be fine tomorrow. But if you go, make sure you take this key." And we're like, okay. And she like handed us a key. Okay. And so the next day we drove up again, and we were able to get past that really muddy, slippery section. And we parked, and no one there again. And we walked maybe about an hour-ish along the side of a mountain. And then like it's getting kind of steeper and steeper on the one side. You're walking along the trail, and you get to a spot where there's just a wall with a door. And I'm like, okay, where's that key? And the key unlocks the door. You open it, and you go through, and the path is, a foot wide at some point, sometimes 2 feet wide, and then a drop of just hundreds of feet on the left. And these little rooms like carved into the side. And so we like had Lily, in a grip luck. We brought her through and tucked her into one of these little rooms, like, don't leave from this spot. And we would walk along this path, and you could look out in these tiny, I call them rooms, but I think it's more of a burial area, right? Pueblo de los Muertos. And you'd sit there and just look out at this incredible view. There was human bones laying in these little rooms, walking back and forth on this ridiculous little trail. I have a couple of photos of it on our website. But that's one of those things where, like, I can't even remember how we heard of it. I think we found it on our website. I think it was on iOverlander, which I'm sure you're familiar with. This a really useful
Oh
app
yeah.
that other overlanders can share locations with each other. And what's interesting actually is someone who I met through kind of the book publishing community, she's doing the Pan Am right now. And she messaged me not too long ago, and she said, they don't let you go there anymore. It's all shut down. There's no like woman with the key or whatever, which I'm not
Oh
surprised because it was
my.
so sketchy. I couldn't believe that they would allow anybody to go in there. But anyway, so there's a lot of, unexpected things like that, and it's not usually the famous thing, right? It's usually something that you just discover that might be, on a different day, maybe it's not that good, or a different situation. And something that I had an amazing time at, someone else maybe doesn't, and vice versa. I would hear of a recommendation from someone, and then we'd go and be like, I don't, this isn't that good, and we'd continue on. So there's so much that depends on just what's happening that day.
Yeah, that's crazy because yeah, we were told initially that northern Peru was just barren desert, not very pretty to look at. Don't go there. Do this other route or fly through it. And we took our time. We actually really enjoyed northern Peru because it
Yeah.
is different.
If you stay away from the
Uh,
coast, if you go up into the mountains, it's beautiful.
we also we went down and got the coast a little bit, and we went to a place like Chan Chan,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
Temple of the Moon, and Tukum, and we learned that it used to be green there. No, it didn't
You
used to
know?
be this huge desert, but before the whole thing, the land changed to a desert, it was green, and that's why these cities existed back then. And it was just cool to see what it was there and picture what it could have been or what it used to be. It was really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I love that part of of driving travel is you see these things that you would never see if you just flew into tourist spots and flew out again. So
Yeah, and conversely, we didn't really ever see highlights in big cities. That's the one thing that we missed out on, which we were okay with missing out on that. And I know some people will park their van, they'll find somewhere just outside of town, or they'll even battle through the city and park, and then go find an Airbnb for a week, something like that. And for us, we were just more excited about the more nature side of things. But you can also do a good combination where you go into big cities and get to experience that as well.
yeah, definitely. But you got to stay away from the crazy traffic places like in Lima. I don't know if you guys drove while you were there.
Oh god, we drove through because it took like 4 hours to get from east to west in Lima. It was ridiculous.
It was the only place where somebody clipped my car at all, and nope, yeah, nobody stopped.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so but you get used to it. So
Mhm.
now, financially, how did you manage the financial aspects of your journey? Because it sounds like you guys left your work. Were you working at all during this trip, or was it totally just on savings?
Yeah, we worked partly online, and the biggest thing is that we rented out rather than selling our house, we rented out our house. Um, and we had been able to pay down a reasonable chunk of the mortgage by then from the jobs that we'd had prior. So the rental income definitely probably covered. I'm trying to think. I mean, honestly, sometimes it was such a low cost life that the rental income 100% covered. But my husband, who had been in the startup world, he was advising, and then I was doing a little bit of work. A friend of mine's a legal recruiter, so I worked for her just for maybe about a year of the trip. So we kind of dabbled in different things. I also tried to write for magazines occasionally, like travel magazines. So I got a few articles published. So we did a few things that we dabbled in that definitely helped. But the biggest thing was the rental income. But yeah, a big piece of the preparing for the trip was like, okay, how much money do we have saved, and how much money do we think we would spend in an average year on a trip like this? And so there's all kinds of blogs where people break down very precisely what they spent on what. So we came up with an average. Um, and then we figured out, okay, therefore we would be able to live on our rental income. And if we need to have got a little bit of savings, that it would be fine because it's much cheaper to live in a van in remote places than it is to live in a city.
Yeah. How how was the rental income during COVID? Was it stable, or did you guys have any issues during that time?
Yes, well, it was stable for a little while, and then they moved out. They said, they worked for whatever tech company, and they said everything's gone remote. We're moving back to I can't remember Oregon or something. So then that stopped. But then that prompted us to sell instead. And also during COVID, we were stable, and so then I was working more full time online because we rented a house and eventually.
Oh, okay, okay, so it worked out. That sounds good.
Yeah,
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 that was that was our fear when we because we ended up selling rather than renting ourselves. So, but everybody chooses a different routes for the property. So,
yeah.
um, now how about like what were some of the biggest fears that you grappled with before setting off on the journey?
I think probably the same fears that anybody would have, you know, from the extreme, like we're gonna be kidnapped in Mexico, to the much more mundane of how are we ever gonna get jobs when we get back, you know, and sort of running the whole range in between. It's the expected fears you might have of taking off on a trip of such length. Um, I know that immediately before, in the months before the trip, there were a few natural things in Mexico. I'm trying to remember now. There was a pretty significant earthquake right before we crossed the border. Gosh, what was it? And in my sort of introductory chapter of the book, I would say like we're all geared up and ready to go, and then boom, boom, boom. There was like three things in a row that happened that made us think, "Oh my god, are we crazy? Maybe we shouldn't be doing this." Um, but yeah, I think, you know, the biggest thing, of course, is just you're living in a vehicle in a foreign country and it's the unknown. You've no idea. And especially at that time, right? That was 2017. Yeah, Trump, I think, had just got elected. I can't remember. There was a lot of anti south of the border commentary going on in the news and everywhere. And so it's intimidating. But at the same time, it was incredibly eye opening to cross that border and be welcomed with open arms over and over again.
Oh yeah, definitely Mexico. I think we spent probably the most of our time, and I was totally wrong about Mexico beforehand. Any preconceived notions I had.
Yeah.
They're very welcoming. It's been for us pretty safe for the most part. I haven't had any other issues other than occasionally a corrupt police officer.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know how your experience was or how much time you spent total in Mexico, but yeah, I agree that they're very welcoming considering what the rhetoric you hear in the US has been about the other way around.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And of course, there are bad things that happen everywhere. You know, I'm sure there
Yeah,
are terrible experiences with tourists. And I remember hearing, I think in the Yucatans, people were getting food poisoning in some of the fancy resorts. But at the same time, like, you know, my cousins live in Chicago, and the gun violence there was just insane, out of control. And there's bad things that happen in every country, I guess is all I'm saying. And it seems
I
like
totally agree.
in general, on the whole, a friendly, foreign looking family who's maybe going to be smiling and making an effort to say hola, and is generally going to be safe. You know, you never know. I always say that Lily was like our get out of jail free card, because between me speaking Spanish and her being a cute 6-year-old girl, it seemed like we could do no wrong. So that's a good way to travel.
That was our experience with our little man in China. He was like our fast pass. Like every single
Yeah.
line we got into, they shoved us to the front and they helped us everywhere we went. It was amazing. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like Colombia, as well as being the most friendly country, also had the most police stops of any country. And we at first it was scary, but we quickly realized like this is just because it has been a violent country not too long ago, and so they have all these police stops just to make sure that that's not happening. And so they stopped. We had more. We got pulled over by the cops more than Colombia than we did anywhere else. But every time, like, you know, I think mostly they were curious because they could tell that we are foreign people in this giant white van. And as soon as we slowed down, like we had Lily trained. We're like, as soon as we stop, unbuckle your seatbelt, lean forward, and say hola, and wave through the window at them.
yeah,
And immediately the guy would break into a smile. And there was a couple of times where someone actually got as far as like, we need to search the van. I remember he came around and I hopped out and opened the door. And immediately in my head, I'm remembering all these things I read about. They're going to plant, you know, some drug under the drawer and then pretend that they found it. And well, they opened the door and there was Lily with a little stuffed bear in her hands, saying, "Hola, senor." And it's like immediately we're talking about his children and traveling to the beach that weekend. And it just changes the mood immediately.
I love that. That's cute.
Yeah.
Well then eventually you transitioned back to the US afterwards. So how was that experience?
It's definitely tough to come back from a big trip. I think ours was compounded because it was COVID and there was this whole kind of hectic, like having to leave the country all of a sudden unexpectedly. Because we were kind of thinking we would stick it out, but then, of course, as everyone on the planet knows, it was this like 2 weeks, and then we're going to go back to normal. Oh, 2 more weeks, and then we're going to go back to normal. Oh, two, and then a whole year goes by. So it was a very tumultuous year anyway, because we never knew what was happening. And then finally,
Yeah.
the government wouldn't extend the visa anymore, and that was the issue. They said basically, if you don't leave by X date, we're taking the van away. And so we had this whole flurry of activity trying to figure out how to ship it. And so I think that kind of was like extra stressful compared to a normal reentry. Um, but then still, it's just, once we were back in the US and relatively stable, there's just so many little differences that you don't think about. But like especially there was like the going from the van to a house side of things, and then there was the going from South America to the USA side of things. So it's like I can put a bag of trash out on the end of my driveway and someone takes it away every week. Like that blew my mind. Like the first 3 weeks, I'd be sitting in the kitchen looking out like, like they're taking our trash away. That's so amazing. Life is so easy because in the van, like everything you produce, whether it's trash or pee or poo, human waste, anything, like you personally are having to dispose of it. So it's quite different to have flushing toilet, hot water in the shower too. Ah, that was amazing because most of the time on the trip, we'd stay either just wild camping or in some very simple, kind of place. And they would always have cold water showers. So having a hot water shower, oh, it's just like absolute like luxury. But yeah, lots of things. Being able to get mail, that was the other thing. We could every birthday, every Christmas, all the grandparents like, where do I send Lily presents? Like, you don't, we don't, you can't get mail. And so whenever somebody would come visit, they'd always be bringing the next level of homeschooling books or a gift for Lily, that kind of thing. And I think the other thing was we kind of got used to having our secret language that no one understood. So we could be somewhere and we could talk openly in English about whatever. And we're like, oh, we don't have our like little secret language we could use. And things are much more expensive. But one really strange little detail that I still to this day notice with text messaging is I think I first noticed the other side of it, the Latin American side of it, most strongly in Ecuador, because that was when that second time Lily went to a local school and I was getting plugged into parent chat groups and all that stuff. And it was like I would text, what time does the school bus come? And the response would be, dearest mother of Lillian, I hope that your day is beautiful today. The bus will come at 8 a.m. or whatever. And I noticed over and over, like every time anyone ever sent a communication, it wasn't just like, I'll pick her up at 3 or like, are you coming to the dinner tonight? It was like some little introductory, how are you doing? And isn't it nice weather or whatever? And so I started doing that. I adopted that local custom and it went on all the way through to Argentina where we lived for over a year. And it was it really like cemented itself in my being through that year we were in Argentina. Like there was no communication that didn't start without some friendly sort of beginning. And it's like a sweet, loving thing. They're just like a very lovable, friendly people. And so here when I got back, I was like, oh, they just said like, want to meet for lunch at noon? Like, how rude. Like they didn't have any introductory thing to that at all. So I'm shifting back into that, like more rapid fire, like just figure things out way of communication.
How long after you got back did you decide to go on another trip?
I had hoped to move from the van trip into the bike. Like I think I said at the beginning of this call that I wanted to do a bike trip originally, but Lily was just too small. And I can't just say she was too small because there are families that do it with tiny kids. Kudos to them. But we decided she was too small. But so by the end of the van trip, I was thinking, okay, she'll be 9 or 10 and we could do it. But then COVID couldn't do it. So we ended up settling into Salt Lake City because we had several different friends there from university and other walks of life. And my husband grew up skiing and it's one of the best ski places in the world. So he was very excited to live there. But I'd never really loved Salt Lake City. It's kind of winter, like 7 months of the year. And it's still a city. I was excited about moving to a small town eventually. And so we always were kind of trying to figure out where we were going to go next. And I thought that as Lily was moving into her, 11, 12-year-old age, that she would want to be stable and have friends and settle down. And when we talked about moving to where we now are living, Moab, for good, she would say like, but what about the bike trip? We've always talked about doing this bike trip. And we were like, do you really want to like uproot everything again, put all our stuff in storage again? And like on the van trip, you had like a drawer of toys. Now you're going to have one toy. Like, are you sure you're ready for this? And she was really the one that said, no, like you've been telling me about this bike trip my whole life. Like we're doing this bike trip. So we were, I guess it was 2.5 years-ish, something. Yeah, 2 years-ish stable in a rental house. So, semi-stable, but not permanently stable. and then we did this bike trip across Europe, which was an amazing adventure. Um, and I think we timed it amazingly because she was 12 years old, or she was 12 years old. We just got back, still like snuggling in the tent with us, able to sort of change in the same general area, and none of the like embarrassing teenager stuff yet. So I think we timed it really well. And now we're settling down here. She's making great friends. She's starting to like, bike places by herself. And I see that next stage of our family, MO changing, entering that next stage. And so I'm glad that we were able to squeeze in that 6-month trip beforehand.
That's outstanding. Yes. And so then I bet after writing a book, you've gotten lots of questions from individuals that are very curious about this lifestyle. Like, what are
Mhm.
some common questions you get, or are there any misconceptions that you'd like to talk about?
I think probably the most common, maybe not for people. If people have read the book, then they kind of already know most of the story. But people that just know about the trip, the most common is always like, "Tell me about the terrible things that happened," because they expect that there's going to be something bad that happened. And of course, there were bad things that happened. Like, oh, you can't go 3.5 years anywhere in the world without something happening, right? But yeah, people I think were most surprised or curious about the danger side, and I don't think in a negative way, not like they were looking for bad things, but more like, oh, maybe could I do this? Like the kind of person that's interested in this trip and interested in my book is probably the kind of person that's also considered doing something, or maybe would like to, but is a bit nervous to. So that's what most people would ask about. Is like, tell me the kind of worst case scenario, and then I can think about if I'm going to try to do this myself.
Yeah, I get that. And I see that too from people. It's just everybody's always drawn to the negative just because they're afraid of it if they want to do it themselves as well.
Yeah.
Just a lot of our listeners out there, they want to know what's the worst that can happen. Is it going to happen? So, well,
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, it just we definitely had those moments where you're like, "What the why am I here?" This like, if I could be home in a little house with a chair and a and a stove, and, that would be so wonderful, but that was definitely the minority of events through maybe through luck or, whatever it was, but yeah, there's definitely gonna be tough times. But when you're living in a vehicle and you never know where you're gonna be sleeping that night, like, a lot of the time, you end up in some gorgeous place and you can't believe your luck, but there's obviously some times where you don't.
that's true. Very good. Well, I wanted to transition over really quick to some travel trivia and then afterwards get a little bit of your parting thoughts.
Yeah.
All right. So, which famous highway stretches over 19,000 miles connecting various countries from Alaska in the north all the way down to South America, like Ushuaia?
Yeah, the Panamericana.
Yes, exactly. Bonus question for that. Where does it get divided into two actual highways?
Oh, I don't know. Does it get divided? I mean, we didn't stay on the Pan Am for most of our trip anyway. We were always going off different side spots, but the map I've seen is just like a big straight, not straight, obviously, but a big line that goes from Alaska to Ushuaia.
Technically, it's divided at the Darien Gap
Oh, you
in
mean where does it
Panama.
is there a
Tech,
break? Yeah, yeah, there's a break in it.
yeah.
Yeah, because you can't drive through from Panama to Colombia. That shipping was a huge pain. That was almost harder than the shipping from Argentina.
Really? See, that one was easier for us than the one from Argentina. So
Really?
different structure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know. Which former colonial capital is nestled in the highlands of Guatemala and is known for its well-preserved architecture, cobblestone streets, and surrounded by volcanoes?
Antigua. We stayed there for a few days, yeah. It's not too far from Lake Atitlan where we stayed for a month, which is really a gorgeous, unique place.
Yeah, we've heard great things about Atalan. We never made it to the lake. We stayed in Guatemala City and did a lot of stuff in Antigua.
Yeah.
All right. In Central America, you can find an enchanting cloud forest. Um, you know which one I'm thinking of?
Monteverde is one we went to in Costa Rica. That's one of the most popular ones. Yeah. Yeah, that place is gorgeous.
Well,
Really.
yeah. All right. Now, which South American country boasts the mysterious lift etched into the desert floor, visible from the air.
Oh, yeah. In Peru, the Nazca lines, yeah. Some people go up in an
Okay.
airplane to see them from high up. We just went up. There's like a kind of a platform you can walk up and see them from.
Yeah, right on the highway, there's a little tower, so you can see it from there, or take the airplane. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and finally, which archipelago, located in the southern tip of South America, is divided between Argentina and Chile?
Tierra del Fuego that we didn't get to go to because of COVID. So we have to go back one day.
There you go. Always a reason to go back.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe next time you'll make it down to Tierra del Fuego.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, well, what message do you have or hope that your readers take away from Monkeys on the Road?
Um, I think if you have an idea of a maybe crazy thing that you want to do, I don't know, and then maybe I shouldn't even say crazy, but a different, a change, something that you would like to change in your life that you've kind of always thought about. Don't just keep waiting and I'm going to do it later. And the kids are too young. Oh, now the kids are teenagers. Oh, now they're too old. Now I'm too old. Like, try to think of a way to make it happen, even on a minor scale. Like, I think our trip was kind of a big, bold, you know, a significant thing. But even if you think about wanting to do something big and crazy like that, think about, okay, I'm going to do it on a really small scale and just see how it flows. Like, I'm going to just go sleep in the backseat of my car one night on the beach or whatever it is you live near to. You live near a park, you live near a mountain, whatever, and just see how that goes. And okay, well, now I'm going to, put down the seats and build a little thing. And okay, now actually let's think about trying to buy a van. We owned our van for like a year before we actually did the trip and start test driving things out. Just try to take bite-sized little pieces of the adventure that you want to do and try them out because you might learn that it's not as scary as you thought it was going to be. And then you'll be able to take the next bigger bite size until you actually do the entire thing.
I love that. Yes. Little bite-sized trips, bite-sized until you're taking that big whole thing. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because sometimes the big trip itself just feels impossible. Like the bike trip we just did, I'll never forget. We pedaled away from my sister's house in England, and I just thought, oh my god, like biking all the way to Asia, like it just seems unfathomable. And it's like the cheesy phrase on the poster, like a journey of 5,000 miles starts with a single step, but it's so true. You just need to do that first little bit, like go and sleep in your car on the beach or whatever it is, and you'll see like, huh, okay, I would change these three things, but this worked out, and I'm going to try a bigger thing. And it doesn't have to be a trip; it could be the change in the job that you've always thought about doing. Well, let's try dabbling in that job on the weekends, or a change in the place to live. Well, just go and check that place out and see if you could live there. Just try to take bite-sized pieces of your dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. It's all little bit at a time. We had the similar situation when we went. We didn't start out thinking we were going to drive all of the Americas. It wasn't
Yeah,
until we got to Guatemala a couple months in that we were like, "Ooh, we could do this if we really wanted to." Or we took a little bit of Mexico, a little bit of Guatemala, and then it was like, "Wait, we can do this." So those little bite-sized chunks that you mentioned. So
yeah,
I love it.
exactly. Yeah,
Well, how can our listeners get a copy of your memoir, your book?
yeah. Just go on Amazon. Yeah, easy. You can buy it on Amazon. It's also online if some people don't like Amazon. Then I'm trying to remember. I think barnesandnoble.com has it. I think maybe bookshop.org also has it. And if you want to just read more about the trip, my blog, monkeysontheroad.com, just very simple, not technologically advanced. I haven't updated it in a little while, but there's a section photos where it's not just a big pile of photos. It kind of tells the story. There's a little paragraph or sentence under each, so you can kind of get the highlights with the visuals as well, which is fun. In fact, I was just flipping through a piece of it before this call, and just getting such amazing nostalgia and memories and of all these incredible places that we went. So, but yeah, the book itself, it's on Amazon. It's doing well. It's got over 1,000 reviews, 4.7 stars or something like that. Won a few awards, so seems to be well received. So yeah, if you like to armchair travel or get inspired, then you can go find it. Monkeys on the Road.
Sure. So yeah, definitely, listeners. go check out the book. And if you do end up getting on Amazon or any of these places, do leave a review. It really helps out the writers and gets the book more exposure. And that's kind of what we do in this community is we like to help each other out as much as possible. So, all right. Well, Mary, it's been awesome talking to you. What's next in your future?
Well, next now is being stable. So we just got back from this bike trip, like I said, for 6 months, and we just moved into, we sold our California home. We moved in here in Moab, and we are loving it. We've only been here barely a month, but making friends, rock climbing, mountain biking, Lily's enjoying the school. It seems like a great place to be, and I'm surprised at how happy I am to be stable. I think because of so much travel, 7 years of being mostly nomadic, I'm really appreciating simple things like, having more than two shirts and having a backyard where I can plant. And like, that's what we're doing now. We're planting tomatoes and we're planting flowers and we're building a community of people. We're trying to make friends rather than constantly moving after a few weeks or months or days.
Excellent. Well, I think one thing that people can take away from this is that you can definitely do these types of trips if you're curious about it. Like Mary says here, bite-sized pieces. Buy the vehicle, rent a vehicle, borrow a friend's vehicle,
Yeah.
take some quick little trips, see what works, see if you like living this way, and then when you feel comfortable with it, you hit the road, you do it, and you don't have to do it
Yeah.
forever. Like Mary is here, she settled down for two
Yeah.
and a half years and then took another really big trip. And now she's settling down again, and
Yeah.
who knows what the future holds in a few years for her.
Yeah. And we have people on the road that had not come from, 15 years in Silicon Valley. They like this one woman I'll never forget, literally in the morning, baked bread. And once she had sold enough loaves of bread to pay for her lunch for that day, then she went on her way and then did the same thing the next. I mean, there was all ranges of financial backgrounds and demographic backgrounds who are doing similar trips. They're doing it in different kinds of vehicles or on bicycles or even hitchhiking. And so that, don't feel intimidated by, oh, well, she worked for 10 years, Google. That obviously that gave us a big advantage in terms of feeling a bit more stable behind us. But we met lots of people who were not coming from that background doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you heard it here, folks. You can take these types of trips, do it in bite-sized chunks, get a feel for it. If it works out for you, great. You can come from a many different backgrounds and have your own experiences. So again, thank you, Mary. Thanks for joining us today. It's been great talking to you. Um, and yeah, listeners, go check out Mary's book. Take care.
Thank you.
We just wanna see something bigger than us. To see and smell and taste something completely new. We just wanna travel the world, the world, the world. Travel